So you could base it off of a template, but I choose not to. Just to have more control over all of the settings. Hopefully the content is conveyed in a clear and concise manner. Alright, so we're just going to go over some of the basics of HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, which can be thought of as the base that you build on for any web page. It will link all of the JavaScript and the CSS files to a single file to be thought of as a page. HTML can be thought of more as a markup language and then as a programming language in the traditional sense. It uses tags to define the different elements on a web page. Every HTML document begins with a doctype HTML declaration, and this can be done easily in VS Code using Emmet. If you just do the exclamation point and press enter, the file will set up the basic body tag and the head along with the doctype HTML, which tells the text editor that it is an HTML document. The head section contains metadata information about the HTML document itself. This includes elements like meta charsef equals UTF-8, which specifies the character encoding for the document. UTF-8 is a widely used encoding that supports a broad range of characters essential for global content. Another crucial element is title. The title tag defines the text displayed in the browser's title bar or tab. So the body section, conversely, contains the visible content of your web page. This is what users will see in their browser window. If you don't add any CSS or styling to it, it'll just be all of the elements in a top-down manner, like as you read the HTML document, that's how they would show up on the page. And you can actually see how it looks just by clicking on it in your file manager, and it would open it up in the browser. But you can also use Live Server, which I recommend for later as you start adding styling and JavaScript. It just provides a little bit nicer representation of what the site would look like if it was being hosted. To make HTML writing a little bit faster, VS Code offers Emmet. So for now, we'll just go over some of the types of HTML elements. You have unordered lists and ordered lists. Unordered lists would show up as bullet points. You use li inside opening and closing brackets for any element inside of the EUL or OL. And it's usual in HTML to have an opening, which would just be like OL, and then closing, which is like a backslash, and then OL again. You can also do lorem ipsum inside of a paragraph tag. The P is a paragraph or just like text, which usually goes in the body, and if you press enter and then you look at how it looks like in the browser, the enter will not show up. You need to tell the browser, you need to format it in a different way than just pressing enter. Another thing is H1 is a header, H2 is a smaller header, and it goes to H3, H4, H5, etc. And there shouldn't be an H2 without an H1. Usually that's the proper way to go about creating headers. Subheaders will only exist if there are headers for them to be subheaders of. CSS, also known as Cascading Style Sheets, controls the visual styling of HTML elements. It dictates aspects like color, font, layout, and responsiveness. We will create a styles.css file later on in another video. For today, we're just going to focus on HTML, but you can also implement indenting in CSS by styling the paragraph element. CSS is similar to HTML in a way. It's more declarative. Logic is usually implemented in JavaScript, such as if-else statements or for loops, and we will create an about.html just to demonstrate linking, and you can easily link using the A element or anchor, and then href, which is to implement logic into your code. So a hypertext reference. So we're looking at Docker Desktop now, and Docker is a really useful tool. While you can't do native Docker containers running just from the kernel on macOS, it's usually done through virtualization. There are some newer things like OrbStack or Colima, which allow you to do a more lightweight virtualization than the actual virtualization of the desktop Docker, which could be heavy if you're using a lower RAM system. But for all intents and purposes, if you're just using one container, or sometimes the Docker desktop app works just fine. Just follow the instructions to set it up if you feel like it's something that you would like to use. Right now, I'm setting up a Node version manager on an Ubuntu Docker container just to demonstrate how Node version manager is set up. And you would just go to the Node.js, the download site, and like I'm doing, just copy paste into your terminal. They don't work. I would recommend just copying the error message into an AI chat assistant, and then it would tell you the correct commands to install the dependencies if you have a package manager installed. If you're using something like Mac or Windows, it's probably already on there. And I mean, when I did install Fedora and I was using it while dual booting, it was on there. I think a Docker container is just more lightweight, so than an actual instance of Linux running full time, which is like the ISO file is like 4 gigabytes at least or something like that. So yeah, this is like 50 or 100 megabytes. So there's probably less packages. You just put in the version that you want. I recommend the newest LTS version for stability, and just you don't have to upgrade as much, and that usually just LTS versions are supported for longer than the regular versions, and you could reliably use it for more than a year at least, and not have to change it, which can be annoying. To make sure that you installed it correctly, like I'm doing here, you can do npm-v, which will be Node Package Manager version. nvm-v is Node Version Manager, which you can use to install new versions of Node.js. It makes it very easy to set globally, or just the different versions. But I just set it to LTS, and then I didn't touch it after that because I didn't have to. But it is a useful tool. Something similar would be SDKman for Java things like Kotlin or the Corretto JDK. Right now I'm just showing how to set up OhmyZSH power level 10K, syntax highlighting and auto suggestions. These can come in handy if you use the terminal often. Repetitive things like git commits or just repetitive commands such as running code or whatever, it makes it easier because it once you start typing, it goes back in its memory, it looks, and then it'll give you a relevant suggestion, which is probably what you were going to type. And yeah, you just have to add it to the plugins section. There are some that come in pre-installed with Oh My ZSH, such as Git, Docker. I think Conda does too. But yeah, you can also save the changes made to Docker containers by opening a new tab and then doing Docker PS, which shows the currently running instances of Docker containers, and then you can commit the changes that you've made so far to it and then add a name for it. Another extension that's really useful is Live Server. As you can see, I just opened it up. It's being so it'll create a direct connection to your browser, and then you can use it to display your whatever you're working on. Just see how it would look if it was being hosted. Another option for hosting is GitHub Pages, but it's generally easier if you're not trying to share it with too many people, just to do the live server, because it's very minimal setup and you can keep improving it and refreshing the server and then seeing the changes. Another thing, just remember to do Command S to save, or Control S, because if you don't save, it won't show up. Just sometimes it just happens where I forget to save and then you're like, why is it showing up? These are just some extensions that could be helpful, like CLine and GitHub Copilot. There's also the Remote SSH extension pack, which is useful for if you're coding or deploying code to a server, such as renting a GPU or something like that. Which we will probably do, but it could be useful for like data science or machine learning projects, or like diffusion or running LLMs over an SSH connection on a server for access to the extra VRAM that the GPUs can have. Because as you start using larger models, you will need better hardware, and you could run into limitations. But yeah, also remembering, you can set your formatter in the settings. I'm setting it to prettier, and then another thing that you can do is format on save and format on paste as well, which could help you if you're just keep your code clean, I guess. And that's all. I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you next time.